Hi everyone, I hope you guys are all okay. The past couple of weeks it has been mental with the weather here in the UK. It has been so hot and uncomfortable and horrible. I've literally had to take frozen hot water bottles to bed with me every night for 2 weeks because it has been crazy. Um, but now, yesterday we had rain, the weather has cooled, it is currently 21.5 degrees in my living room right now, and I am in heaven compared to what it's been like the past couple of weeks. And the book I've been reading over these 2 weeks, I think because the heat and everything as well, I found it so uncomfortable. I couldn't really read as much, or to say, as long as I usually do in the evenings and that. This is why it took me a couple of weeks to read. That book is Children of the Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I apologise if I butchered that surname, um, but I have issues with words sometimes and names. But yes, so this is the first book of a trilogy that is being written. The second book was meant to be published March this year. It's actually been pushed back to March next year. I don't know why that has happened, but that is the situation. So this book, I've seen it on young adult sections, bookshops, and I've kind of, been debating about getting it. And then when my sister and I were at Waterstones during her last visit, the girl at the shop was like, "You have to get this book, you have to read it." So I bought it. And then I read it. Now, this book, okay, let's start off talking about what it's about. So this book is set in a fantasy world, and there's actually a map of it. There we go. I don't know how well you can see that. Called Orisha, and obviously there's various different sections of it, and so just to get you an idea of the layout of it, and the people who are within this land are like African tribes. They're the references to Africa, the music, the culture, the outfits and everything are just stunning throughout this book. And there was magic like 10 years previously, and until an event that had happened called the Rain, that's it. And sorry, I couldn't remember what it was called. In which people who have magic are known as the Magi, and they looked after. There's all different types, and they all can have different powers, to do different things. So, like controlling fire and water to be able to go into people's memories and all that kind of stuff. And they're very noticeable because they have like copper-like skin and white hair. So this is why this cover, absolutely gorgeous. And as I said, up until like 10 years previously, magic had been there. The Magi at first were looked on with confusion, then were loved, and then a king took over and basically bad-mouthed about them and brought fear into the land about what they were able to do. And it led to this massacre that happened 10 years earlier. And since then, magic has been wiped out. But there are the Magi in that who who have their white hair and everything. They cover up their hair or they shave their hair or anything, but they're always, everybody knows who they are because of their distinct look, and they are frowned upon. They're referred to as the maggots, and they've just kind of had to carry on life as well as they can. But there is a girl in this called Zeely, who has a father, Baba, and her brother Zayn, and they all live together and things. Zeely is the main character, really. Well, I say that, but then there are three other characters who this book follows very closely, but I'll discuss them in a moment. And her mother was one of the Magi, and the opening page is her actually talking as her herself staring at her mother's corpse hanging from a tree in chains when she was 6 years old, and I was like, well, that's one way to open a book, bloody hell. And it's all about them kind of wanting to get magic back, and the fight that she has to go on. Now, as I said, there are 3 other characters that this book flips back and forth against. It's all written in first person perspective, but each chapter it changes to a different person. So we've got Zeely, as I said, Zane, her brother, and then we've got the prince and princess. So with them, as I said, this king came along who badmouthed about them all and everything, and kind of wiped out magic in a sense. And it's his children from his second marriage, because his children and his wife and his first wife were killed. So this is take 2 in a sense of his family, and he doesn't treat them in the nicest way. And it's about these 4 characters, how they intertwine, how they have to work together and such to be able to figure out what's going on in the world and possibly bring magic back. So as I said, this is the first book of a trilogy. So straight away you have that thing where this is a groundwork in a sense. This is establishment of characters, of worlds, of the rules, of the past that has happened, and sort of going forward a bit, but you're not going very far in a way. But saying that, there is a lot of stuff that goes on in this book, which I didn't anticipate that it necessarily would, because I was expecting, it's a trilogy. So this is the first book of a trilogy. So as I said, we're going to move up a bit, and we're not going to go like at lightning speed or anything like that. But the thing about this book that I had issue with was that I had no emotional connection to any of the characters. So even though there is a lot of stuff going on in this book, it felt quite dry for me. I was like, okay, I can understand why you're feeling like that, but I'm not feeling that. I'm not connected to this. It kind of feels like, when you're at the zoo and an animal you're standing here, an animal is right there, but there's that pane of glass between you. I was very, very, very aware of the pane of glass between me and the characters in this book. It is well written, I will say that. I'm not going to, be cruel and say, I wasn't able to connect because it was poorly written or anything. No, it's just me, my own thing, that I just couldn't connect to these characters. But that doesn't mean that nobody else can. It felt just a bit distorted in some regards. Like, you are constantly going. It feels like you're on a run with this. There's constant action going on. You can't get a chapter without a rest unless it's for a moment that is quite near the end of the book. It kind of, I'm constantly feeling jolted like this, and like I said, I'm constantly feeling like I can see the pane of glass between me and the characters and the world and all the events that are going on, but I want to be on the other side of that glass. It's when I have that connection, the glass disappears for me when I'm reading, and I am in that world, I am part of that world, and I just didn't have that with this book. I really respect what Tomi is doing in regards to that. This is very much a Black Lives Matters book in a fantasy setting. Really love that. Really respect it. I totally understood how these various characters feel about their situation and everything, and how they are looked down on and called maggots and treated like scum and everything, just because of who they were when they were born. But that doesn't define who they are as people. I really love and respect Tomi for doing that. So yeah, love that. Absolutely love it. I really quite fancy reading now. The Hurt You Give. I really do. I've had that for a couple of years now, and I still haven't read it, so that might be coming up soon. And yeah, it's triggered me to want to read other books like that to do with, you know, Black Lives Matter and everything. So in a way, I can't be upset and angry at this book or anything and go, oh well, that was a waste of my time or anything. It wasn't like that whatsoever. I just had an issue with the emotional connection to the characters. But yeah, you're constantly on the move, you're constantly running, you're constantly in panic, you're constantly confused, and she does this thing. It's quite clever. But sometimes it can be a bit jarring in that you will be, as I said, first person perspective of a character, and all of a sudden, literally next sentence, you're in another world or something with this character because of a magic ability that another character has had has meant that they have gotten into the mind of the character who's you're reading, and so you're literally seeing that other character come into this chapter character's brain and is talking to them, and then suddenly it goes again and you're back to, you know, the first person perspective of whoever the chapter is about. So it's quite jarring at times when that happens, but it's for a purpose. It really, also, I just want to say, because obviously, you know, you guys know that I really like fantasy. I really enjoy young adult fantasy as well, which is what this book is. In regards to fantasy, it very much makes me think of Sarah J. Maas. It makes me think of George R. R. Martin. It doesn't make me think of a world kind of like Cassandra Clare, you know, Mortal Instruments, all that jazz. And that's not a negative thing at all. I'm just trying to say that this is more high fantasy than the fantasy of, say, Cassandra Clare's world. I do think though, when just to explain that, because this is a completely different world, that it's completely different set of rules, everything is already established, and you have to kind of learn and go with the flow of it and sort of learn the history as you read it, rather than being told, okay, XYZ, this is the ground rules, these that we have to deal with. This is why I feel, and obviously you know, fantasy animals as well, you know, because obviously George R. R. Martin with dragons and all that. So this is why I feel it's very much more high fantasy, whereas the world of like Cassandra Clare's Mortal Instruments and Shadowhunters, all that jazz, is really fantasy. It's fantasy, but it's set in our world. It's New York through a veneer. Through a, oh, what's the word, perception filter. Yeah. So yeah, we as humans, or mundanes as we're referred to in her books, just see New York as it is, whereas, you know, Shadowhunters and that see New York with werewolves and vampires and demons and all that jazz. So as you can see, those examples, very, very, very different, but that's just to explain where this book sits. It's more in the high fantasy, like Sarah J. Maas and George R. R. Martin, all that stuff, rather than the Cassandra Clare kind of fantasy world. So with this book, I think, personally for me, I would read the others, but I think I would like to wait until all three have been published, reread the first one then, and then just go straight through the rest of the trilogy. I think that would work for me, because right now I'm like, okay, that was a really interesting start. I had my connection issues with the emotions, but it was a good start. But I'm not like, oh my god, I cannot wait until March next year in order to get the second book. This is going to be amazing. but I'm like, yeah, it's good. It's not bad. I think that's the best way that I can describe it right now. Which it's not that great of a description, not that great of a review, but I just feel it was the strength of the book, of the story, great. The strength of the way it was written, good. The strength of the connection, not great. But that's just me. That's just my, personal opinion. So yeah, I think this is something, because it's so visceral as well. I think this is something that could really work if it's adapted to a film or TV or series or something. I really honestly do. I think it's gonna be a powerful story in the long run of the trilogy. But for the first chapter, I'm like, okay, you've established your groundwork. For me, it's a little bit shaky, but let's just see what happens. But I'm not like counting down on my calendar for the day in which it will be published, like I am with CJ Sanson's latest book, which I know is published and everything, but because all of my books are the smaller size paperback, I have to make sure they're all in the same format, so I have to wait for the smaller size paperback, and that means I have to wait until the 19th of September, and I have it I have it marked on my calendar. See, that I am like so therefore I am, oh my god, I am so excited, but I'm not feeling that for this, for the next book. So yeah, Tommy, thanks for the read. Really did enjoy it. Like I said, it's triggered me to want to read other books related to Black Lives Matter and everything. So thank you for that. Thank you for your approach in looking at Black Lives Matter movement and bringing that into fantasy and high fantasy. It's really brave thing to do, because yeah, not a lot of fancy books actually kind of cover African culture and everything, and so to do that for young adult fiction, that is awesome. So yeah, thank you, Tommy, for doing that. And yeah, we'll see what happens with the second and then the third book. But I think I'd like to reread this, like I said, once the other books have been published, and just read the trilogy straight through and see how I go. But overall, I did like it, but it wasn't my favourite book that I have read recently. So there we go. There are my thoughts on Children of the Blood and Bone. Have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave a comment in the comments box below, or give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely up to you, like decide. And I'll be back to announce which book I'm going to be reading next. And I'm actually going to do a bulk announcement, because I just find them so much easier. And I'm sure it's nice of you guys to know exactly what's coming up. So yeah, so I'll be back with my announcement video soon. Alright guys, bye.